Everybody, welcome back to the shop. You know, if you're anything like me, you probably have a couple of these laying around. And I'm not just talking about any rasp, but I'm talking about a rasp that's starting to get kind of dull. Now typically, what most people do with these is use them up until they get dull and then chuck them in the garbage and go out and buy new ones. But if you've got a couple pattern makers rasps, like, you know, the Nicholson 49 or 50, they're kind of pricey, you know, $30, $40, some places even $50 for one rasp. You know, it kind of makes you think twice about just pitching it in the trash and going out and buying a new one. And if you've got one of the RUs or you know, a Gramercy rasp, forget it. You know, those aren't something that you want to just pitch in the garbage once they start to get a little bit dull. But you will notice that they start cutting a little bit slower and they clog a little bit more. So, you know, what are you going to do about that? Well, what I want to show you today is just a little blacksmith tip for sharpening a rasp. Now, there is a commercial service that you can send these out to be sharpened, and it's not too unreasonable. I think they charge you somewhere in the neighborhood of about $10 to $12 a piece to sharpen one of these rasps, and they do come back extremely sharp, and most of the time they come back better than new. But if you've got several to do, or maybe you've got some, you know, not so expensive rasps that you want to try and do yourself, you can do it at home. Now, I'm not talking about buying tiny little honing stones and sharpening all these tiny little teeth by hand. What I'm talking about is chemical sharpening. We're going to use a mild acid to sort of etch the edges of these teeth, and it's going to make them somewhat sharper than what they are now. So let me show you how to do that. So the first thing you've got to do is get the rasp completely clean and free of sawdust and chips. If you've been putting this job off, now's when you're going to pay for it. You really need to get every last little bit of dust and chips out of the rasp. And I know Michael RU recommends just a nylon brush so that you don't dull the teeth, and that's what I use the majority of the time. But if you put off cleaning your rasps, you're bound to have some pieces and some chunks in there that just won't come out. So you can try a soft wire brush. This is a little bit stiffer than the nylon bristle brush. It is said that a metal brush will dull the teeth of the file, but hey, we're going to sharpen it anyway. So, you know, the whole reason we're doing this is because it's kind of dull to begin with. So, no, not really that big of a deal if you dull a couple of teeth. But it is important that you get them clean because you don't want any sawdust in there to soak up and hold on to that acid after we pull the rasp out. And you could also find the point of an awl useful. If you've got some really stubborn chunks that just won't come out, if you kind of just go in from the top where the awl punch went in to punch the teeth, you can use the tip of that awl to loosen up some of those chunks. Then go back to the wire brush and clean the rest of those out. Now that we've got the rasp cleaned, time to set up our little sharpening station. So you're going to need a piece of 1.5 inch PVC pipe. The length needs to be longer than your longest rasp. So whatever the longest one you're going to sharpen is, make it several inches longer than that one. You're going to need to glue a cap onto the end with PVC primer and cement. You're going to need some way to hold that. So I just have a hand screw clamp with a notch cut in it that I'll use as sort of a base that I can hold everything up. And you need a way to suspend the rasp in the tube. You don't just want to plunge it in there and let it sit on the bottom. You actually want to suspend it in the solution, and you don't want to plunge the handle in. So what I did was just make a little hanger out of a piece of wire coat hanger that just clips over the sides of the tube. The rasp fits in there, but it's not wide enough to let the handle slip through, and then it just sits over the top of the pipe like so, and it'll allow the rasp to hang in the tube by its handle. And then finally we need our sharpening solution. You can use any type of mild acid. A lot of folks like citric acid for this. You can buy powdered citric acid in some hardware stores. You can get it in some grocery stores. If you can't find it there, if you go to a brewery, a brewing or winemaking supply store, you can get it there. You can use a mild solution of muriatic acid. You can usually get that in bigger home improvement and hardware stores. I just like to use plain old household vinegar. I use white vinegar. You can use red wine vinegar. You can use cider vinegar, whatever, but you know, the red vinegar might discolor the steel a little bit, so I just use plain old white vinegar. So I've got the hand screw, and I'm going to set it up so that the pipe is just held in the hand screw, and that'll keep everything from tipping over. Then I'm going to fill the pipe an inch or so from the top with the vinegar. Okay, that should be good. And you want to make sure that you cover all of the teeth when you put this in. So fill it up high enough that it's going to cover all the teeth. Now I just slide the rasp handle into the little hanger, and then I can suspend it in the vinegar, and I try and keep it from touching the sides. I don't know how much it really matters if it touches the sides, but mostly I'm trying to keep it off the bottom, and that's what the little hanger's for. So now I'll just let it sit in here anywhere from 12 to 24 hours. If I were using something stronger, a citric acid or muriatic acid solution, I may only go, say, 4 to 6 hours. But because vinegar is very mild and it's going to remove the steel very slowly, I'm going to let it sit overnight, 12 to 24 hours. So after 24 hours, I'm going to remove said rasp from the vinegar bath. And you'll notice there's some rust up here where it was exposed to air. Don't worry about that. It's just surface rust. And it's actually brown rust, which really is not bad for the tool. The brown rust actually will help to protect it. And it's just surface rust. It'll brush off later. What I have in this cup is just a mixture of baking soda and water. I'm going to use that to rinse the tool off, because it's going to neutralize the rest of the acid. So I'm just going to pour it over. Just rinse everything off real good. Pour it over this little rusted area here. And now just dry it really, really good. And don't tell her I said so, but you could borrow the wife's hair dryer if you really want to really get this super dry. The other thing you might notice when you take it out of the acid bath is that the steel is a slightly different color. It's more of a dark matte gray rather than sort of the shiny grayish silver that the rasp might have originally been. Again, this is just a result of the acid etching the steel. It's not going to hurt the tool. It's just a side effect of the sharpening process. So I'm just trying to get all the excess moisture out of those teeth. And again, you could take a hair dryer to this or a heat gun and go ahead and dry this a little bit more. So the last thing that I might do is just brush off any little bits of fiber from the paper towel from drying it. And then you could take the little soft wire brush that I mentioned for cleaning and just clean off that little bit of rust that forms up by the handle where it was exposed to the air. And you'll find that it cleans right off because it's just a little surface rust. And as I mentioned, the brown rust really isn't bad anyway. Brown rust is actually forms a protective coating underneath it. So Old tools that you see with that sort of brownish color to them are a result of brown rusting. So and it sort of puts a coating on the outside of the steel and actually protects them. So that's it. And I can definitely see that the rasp, and I can feel that the rasp is noticeably sharper than it was yesterday. And all it took was a few hardware store items and a little bottle of salad dressing from the grocery store. So I hope that can help rescue a fallen rasp or two in your shop.